I'm 27 now and go by James. When I was a kid, I tried hard to be the perfect son. My folks split up when I was 8. I lived with Mom mostly, but loved my weekends with Dad. We'd hike trails, do projects at his place, and he'd often tell me how proud he was. It really hurt when things changed around my 13th birthday. Dad started seeing Willow, who had 2 kids, Owen and Lily. Lily was 10, and Owen was 12. At first, I was glad to have more people around, but that changed when they moved in. Willow quit her job to focus on the kids, so Dad worked longer hours to pay for everything, and he was hardly ever home. Pretty quickly, Willow and her kids became his main priority. I tried to deal with it, but I never felt like I fit in. Dinner talk was always about Owen's sports and Lily's dance, and my achievements were ignored. Plans were made around their schedules, and I felt like an afterthought. One summer, I wanted to visit my grandparents, but Willow suggested an amusement park trip for Lily instead. My plans got canceled. High school got even worse. Dad had been saving for my college. But then Mom told me that Owen's private school was paid for with that money, because Willow convinced Dad it was necessary since Owen was struggling in public school. Dad didn't even tell me himself. Mom did. When I talked to him, he said Owen needed it more, and we'd figure out my college somehow. But he barely helped, always saying he was broke. Mom ended up taking out loans for my education. Dad missed my high school graduation because Lily had a dance thing that day, and Willow said that was more important. He rarely called, and when he did, it felt like an obligation. By the time I started college, I'd stopped visiting Dad's much. It felt like I was intruding. Willow would make little digs about me being too busy for family dinners, which were always about Owen and Lily anyway. Whenever I tried to share anything about my life, it was brushed aside. If I mentioned struggling with a class, Willow would change the subject to Owen's med school plans. I felt invisible. I tried to fix things by suggesting lunch with just Dad, but Willow and the kids would always tag along. If I said I felt left out, Dad would accuse me of being too sensitive. It was like talking to a wall. It happened slowly, but it hit me hard how many promises Dad had broken. He used to say I was his priority, but Willow made it clear I was an outsider. One Christmas, I got a gift card, while Owen and Lily got really thoughtful gifts. It hurt, so eventually I stopped trying. Every time I saw Dad, it just reminded me that Willow's kids were more important to him. He didn't seem to notice or care about who I was becoming. Our relationship was basically dead by the time I finished college. Looking back, losing my connection with Dad wasn't the worst part. He actually started to believe that his behavior was fine, even though it wasn't. He really thought he was being fair. And Willow always made sure I knew I was on the outside. After college, I barely talked to Dad, just the occasional text or holiday card. But I still hoped things would get better. That hope was crushed at Dad's 50th birthday. It was a big party, and I wasn't invited. I found out from pictures on social media. I called Dad, and he first said it was a mistake. Then he blamed Willow, saying she handled the guest list and must have forgotten me. But the pictures showed a carefully planned party, and I was deliberately excluded. He promised to make it up to me, but I never heard from him. Soon after, Lily got engaged. I found out about the engagement party on social media, too. I didn't even call Dad this time. It felt like a pattern. He'd say Willow organized it and forgot me, and that it was a small gathering. I was too tired to argue. Then I realized I'd been removed from the family group chat. A cousin mentioned a barbecue I didn't know about. I checked, and the chat was gone. My cousin said Willow probably cleared it to make it easier to manage. After that, I learned about family events from social media or secondhand. My mother saw how unhappy I was and urged me to talk to Dad directly. I wasn't sure it would help, but I tried. One Saturday, I went to his house unannounced. Willow answered the door. She seemed surprised and said it wasn't a good time because they were busy. I heard voices and laughter from the backyard. Another event I wasn't invited to. She didn't invite me in. A few days later, my cousin told me Dad bought Owen a new car for his birthday. This was the same man who couldn't help much with my college tuition. Around this time, I started seeing a therapist. Dad's actions weren't random. They were a pattern. He always put Willow and her kids first. When I confronted him, he said I was overreacting and jealous. He didn't address the specific examples, like missing my graduation or the college fund. He just said I was too sensitive. My friends agreed and told me to set boundaries. Thanksgiving was the final straw. Dad spent it with Willow's family, and I wasn't invited. He sent a weak apology text. It was a pattern, saying the minimum to keep things calm but never trying to improve. A few days later, Willow called and accused me of being unfair to Dad and stressing their family. She just wanted me to stop causing trouble. I realized that I was the only one trying to fix things. Dad was comfortable with the situation, and I was exhausted. I decided to step back. I told myself I wouldn't reach out again until he made an effort to meet me halfway. I focused on my mental health instead of trying to save a relationship that wasn't important to him. I told Dad I wouldn't participate unless he included me in his family. I wanted the same respect Owen and Lily got. I emailed him, and he stopped contacting me. At first, it was a relief, but the silence became hard to take. My mother supported me and encouraged me to focus on my job, friends, and hobbies. I did, and I got a promotion. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building a life independent of Dad's approval. Then, I heard from family that Willow was bad-mouthing me, calling me selfish and ungrateful, and blaming me for the family problems. She ignored the years of exclusion. A cousin told me that Willow had urged Dad to prioritize Owen and Lily because they needed stability. I guess I didn't deserve stability. My therapist suggested I write a letter to express my feelings, not to change him, but to help myself. I wrote down every time I felt overlooked. I didn't send it right away. A few weeks later, I got a wedding invitation from Lily. It was just a standard card, no personal note. It felt like an afterthought. I decided not to go. I knew I'd feel like an outsider. My refusal caused more drama. Dad called, accusing me of being arrogant and petty. He demanded I go to the wedding to keep the peace and not ruin Lily's day. It was the same old story. Willow and her kids' happiness mattered most. I told him I wouldn't be at the wedding. He wasn't happy. When Willow started using social media more, things got worse. She posted about ungrateful family members who couldn't let go of their egos. Some relatives agreed, but others messaged me privately to support me. An aunt said she respected my decision to set boundaries. My therapist and friends helped me stick to my decision. Then, I had a moment of clarity. I was done with the emotional manipulation. I wasn't going to keep trying to prove my worth. If Dad and Willow wanted to see me as the villain, fine. I was going to stop trying to please them. I decided to have a final confrontation, not to save the relationship, but to get closure. I called Dad and suggested we meet at a cafe without Willow. He agreed, but he didn't seem happy about it. I told him everything: the years of exclusion, the broken promises, the favoritism. I recounted every instance, from missing my graduation to using my college fund for Owen. Dad said he had done his best. He claimed it was about supporting Owen and Lily, and that Willow had encouraged him to prioritize them. He blamed her for some of his choices. He said I had my mother to rely on. Then I brought up the money. I asked how he could use my college fund for Owen and then buy him a new car. He said he thought I was better off with my mother managing my finances, and that I was smart and would figure things out. He acted like it was no big deal. Willow showed up before I could say more. She scolded me for being ungrateful and attacking Dad. She tried to control the situation and play the victim, like always. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and told them I was done. I wasn't going to listen to another one of their pity parties. Dad called after me, but I left. I wasn't going to waste any more time on them. A few days later, relatives messaged me. Some supported me and said they regretted not speaking up sooner. It felt good to be validated, but it also showed how long I had been dealing with this alone. Then Dad sent me an ultimatum: accept things as they were or be cut off. It stung, but I didn't reply. Instead, I went no contact. I blocked Willow, Owen, and Lily. I didn't want any more drama. Of course, Willow didn't let it go. She posted about me on social media, calling me immature and accusing me of trying to erase the family. The same woman who had been excluding me for years. Some relatives agreed, but others messaged me to say they were on my side. I ignored it all. My therapist and friends reminded me that cutting ties was self-preservation, not selfishness. I focused on my job and started painting. It was a way to channel my energy into something positive. My therapist said I had made progress and that setting boundaries was a sign of growth. For the first time in years, I felt like I was writing my own story. A few weeks later, I sent the letter I had written to Dad. It wasn't about making peace, but about closing the chapter and saying what I needed to say without expecting a response. I sent it and didn't look back. That letter was the end of my emotional involvement with their family. I wasn't expecting an apology or change. I just wanted to move on. After sending the letter, I hoped for some kind of response, even a text. But nothing happened. The silence confirmed that he wasn't going to change. It made my decision to move on easier. I cut ties completely. I unfriended and blocked Willow, Owen, and Lily on social media. I didn't care about their posts, and I didn't want them seeing mine. Soon after, I heard about Willow's reaction. Relatives told me she was furious, calling me immature and accusing me of trying to erase the family. The irony wasn't lost on me. Shortly after, Dad messaged me, not to apologize, but to scold me for blocking his wife and stepchildren. He said it was rude and made things harder for everyone. I replied briefly, saying I had no desire to stay in contact with people who treated me as less than family. His only response was that I would regret it someday. Unbelievably, a couple of aunts and uncles contacted me to show their support. They said they understood why I had distanced myself and admitted they had seen how I was treated but hadn't wanted to get involved. It was comforting to know that not everyone saw me as the villain Willow portrayed. In the meantime, I focused on my work. I got a promotion and was put in charge of a big project. It felt amazing to have something that was completely mine, separate from the family drama. Around this time, I reconnected with cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. I found out I wasn't the only one who had issues with Willow. We bonded over our shared frustrations, and it felt like I was reclaiming a part of the family I thought I had lost. Of course, Willow didn't stop. I heard from friends that she was spreading rumors about me, calling me a bad son and saying I was jealous of her children. I decided not to react. That would just give her more ammunition. I resolved not to stoop to her level. In therapy, I discussed everything that had happened and how I was coping. My therapist said I had made significant progress in setting boundaries and prioritizing my well-being. It made me realize how far I had come. I wasn't the same person who had spent years trying to earn Dad's approval. Finally, I was putting myself first. Throughout all of this, my mother was a constant source of support. One evening, she told me how proud she was of my growth and resilience. It meant the world to me. I had her unwavering support, which was more than enough. Then, something unexpected happened that gave me some closure. I ran into Owen at a coffee shop. He saw me, froze, and quickly turned away. It was awkward, but it made it clear that our relationship was beyond repair, and I was okay with that. When I thought about everything, I realized that I had become stronger. I felt good about how I had handled things. Then, I got a job transfer to a new city. It felt like the perfect way to start over. I took it and started planning my move. Moving was exactly what I needed. My first few weeks were a whirlwind. Being in a new place where no one knew my story was invigorating. Through work, I started attending networking events. I even joined a hiking club. The group was welcoming, and I soon made friends with people who also enjoyed adventure and personal growth. Every hike felt like I was leaving my past behind. A couple of years passed. I was thriving in my new city, with a great job, a solid group of friends, and a fulfilling life. Then, out of the blue, I got a call from my dad. His voice sounded strained and desperate. He explained that he and Willow were facing serious financial difficulties. A business venture had gone south, and they were on the verge of losing everything. He was calling because he needed a significant amount of money, and he had nowhere else to turn. He hesitantly asked if I could help. There was a long pause. I thought about all the years of being made to feel like an outsider, the broken promises, the blatant favoritism. The money he needed was a fraction of what he had once been willing to spend on Owen without a second thought. Part of me wanted to say yes, to prove that I was the bigger person. But the overwhelming feeling was one of self-preservation. I told him calmly that I was sorry to hear about his situation, but I wasn't in a position to help. I explained that I had my own life and financial obligations, and that after everything that had happened, I didn't feel any obligation to bail him out. There was silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Willow in the background, her voice sharp and accusatory. Dad came back on the line, his tone a mix of anger and desperation. He accused me of being heartless and unforgiving, saying that family should help each other in times of need. I replied that he was right, family should help each other, but that he and Willow had made it clear years ago that I wasn't considered part of their family. I reminded him of the many times I had been excluded, overlooked, and made to feel like an afterthought. I told him that I had finally built a life for myself, free from their toxicity, and I wasn't going to jeopardize my well-being to save them from the consequences of their own choices. The call ended with Dad hanging up in anger. I felt a pang of sadness, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of closure. I had stood my ground, and I had refused to be drawn back into their drama. It was a clear message. I was no longer the person they could manipulate or take for granted. The years of hurt and resentment wouldn't disappear overnight, but I had taken a significant step towards truly moving on. The aftermath of my decision was significant. Within a few weeks, word reached me through my mom that Dad and Willow had indeed lost their house and were forced to move in with Owen and his wife. The strain was evident. Owen, who had always been favored, was now bearing the brunt of his parents' financial woes and resentment. Lily, to her credit, attempted to mediate. She reached out, not to ask for money, but to express her regret for how things had turned out. She confessed that she had often felt uncomfortable with how I was treated, but had been too young and passive to speak up. Her words offered a measure of solace, a reminder that not everyone in that family was blind to the injustice I had experienced. The most impactful change, however, came from my dad. Months after our phone call, he sent me a letter, not an email, but a handwritten letter. In it, he finally acknowledged the pain he had caused me. He admitted that he had allowed Willow to influence his decisions and that he had prioritized her children over me, his own son. He expressed deep remorse for missing my graduation, for dismissing my feelings, and for the college fund. The letter wasn't an attempt to ask for forgiveness or financial help. Instead, it was a genuine admission of wrongdoing and a long-overdue apology. The letter had a profound effect on me. While it didn't erase the past, it allowed me to release the anger and resentment I had held onto for so long. I realized that my refusal to help had forced him to confront the consequences of his actions. For the first time, he was seeing the devastation his choices had wrought. In the end, I didn't offer them any financial assistance. They had to face the reality of their choices. But I did something more important. I forgave my dad. Not for his sake, but for my own. I replied to his letter, acknowledging his apology and expressing my hope that he would learn from his mistakes. I emphasized that while I couldn't rebuild the relationship we once had, I was willing to move forward without the burden of bitterness. The experience transformed me. I emerged from the situation stronger, more self-assured, and more determined to create a life filled with genuine connections and unwavering self-respect. The pain they inflicted ultimately became the catalyst for my growth and my journey toward a future defined by my own terms.